Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. MALLOR GRODNER Attorneys providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Alumni Association connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. Alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. New COVID restrictions go into effect tomorrow as the state continues to break records for new cases and hospitalizations.
We're in a different time now. We all know now. And we know what we can do to protect ourselves and one another.
That story just ahead, and our State House reporter Brandon Smith joins us to talk about the timing of the new restrictions. Is it a coincidence this is coming about a week after the election? And the state's attorney general is joining a lawsuit challenging the validity of some ballots in Pennsylvania, why he says it impacts Hoosiers. Then we'll travel to northern Indiana. One of the most complete Frank Lloyd Wright houses in the country is located in West Lafayette. It dates back to the 50s and recently got a grant to fund a $1 million renovation project. Those stories, plus the latest news from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, Governor Eric Holcomb has been pleading with Hoosiers for weeks to wear masks, avoid crowds, and practice social distancing. This week, he used his press briefing to express disappointment that Hoosiers haven't been following his advice or that of medical professionals. Then, the governor announced plans to impose new restrictions. A series of new rules take effect tomorrow. We have team coverage tonight. We start with my colleague, Sarah Whitmire.
COVID-19 is surging across the state with no signs of slowing down.
We expect the surge that we are currently experiencing to continue for a number of weeks.
We throw around a lot of numbers when we try to explain the impact COVID-19 is having in Indiana. By nearly every metric, it's getting worse. Indiana continues to break records with new daily COVID-19 increases. Every day this week, the state reported more than 4,000 new cases. Hospitalizations are also at an all-time high at more than 2,500. The governor this week said the situation is becoming critical.
The number of hospitalized COVID patients is at an all-time high. And hospital officials tell us that in some instances, their patient numbers may double over the next several weeks.
For weeks, Holcomb has resisted calls to reinstate any coronavirus restrictions. Since moving to Stage 5 of the governor's Back on Track reopening plan at the end of September, Indiana's 7-day positivity average has increased by more than 300%.
Stage 5 has been viewed by some as a reason to return to the days before we ever heard of the words COVID-19 or pandemic in a modern day sense. Too many have said, we'll just ride it out, and if I get it, so be it.
So beginning this weekend, Holcomb says there's no more Stage 5.
We're taking these steps again to try to reduce the number of people who contract the virus, to quarantine those who are close contacts and isolate those who test positive, to protect our hospital capacity, and to give some measure of relief to our stressed and strained healthcare workforce and system.
The new rules will limit crowd sizes to 20 people in the highest risk red counties and 50 people in the next riskiest orange counties. The governor's order extends the mask mandate for another month and requires social distancing whether people are indoors or outside. The governor's order is not as restrictive as the stay-at-home order this spring that closed schools, limited travel to only essential trips, and ordered bars and restaurants to close their doors.
In February and in March, the world didn't know a lot about how COVID-19 was transmitted. We're in a different time now. We all know now. And we know what we can do to protect ourselves and one another.
But the state's health commissioner says people are getting fatigued.
We're hearing that people are refusing to wear masks, that some employees are being told to come to work even when they're supposed to be on quarantine, and that parents won't test their children for fear of having to quarantine.
It's been 9 months since Indiana saw its first COVID-19 death. Since then, more than 4,500 Hoosiers have died from the virus, more than 400 just this month. Health experts say the current wave of new COVID-19 infections appears bigger and more widespread than the surges that happened in the spring and summer, and it threatens to be worse.
Still, even with 10 million cases in the United States, still about 90% of the people have not had this disease. And you're coupling that with the highest level of spread yet.
There is good news on the horizon. Pfizer announced on Monday that its COVID-19 vaccine may be 90% effective based on early and incomplete test results. And the Food and Drug Administration gave emergency authorization to Indianapolis-based Eli Lilly for its COVID-19 antibody drug.
So we know what game changers they will be when they are widely available, but we got to get there.
If the FDA approves the vaccine, it will be months before it's ready.
So nothing, again, has really changed in these last 6-7 months here in the U.S. There's still a lot of susceptible people. There's still no treatment or vaccine that's highly effective. Those things are coming, thankfully. And there's still a very high risk associated with this very new mysterious respiratory virus.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sarah Whitmire.
New COVID infections have been increasing for weeks, and during his campaign for re-election, the governor faced intense pressure to reenact some COVID restrictions. The governor said he wouldn't do that, and even last week, the day after winning re-election, he doubled down and said there was no truth to the rumors that the state would be shutting down following the election. We are continuing our coverage now with my colleague Brandon Smith in Indianapolis. Hi, Brandon. You very directly asked the governor this week why he waited so long to impose more restrictions. What was his response?
I honestly can't tell you. He said words, but none of them were really the answer to the question I asked. I've heard the same rumors that you just mentioned, that it was for political reasons, that he was running for re-election and worried about his chances. I don't get that, because he was always going to win re-election. He was going to win re-election by a landslide, which he did. And so if that was really his thinking, I don't understand the logic of it. Quite honestly, I don't really understand why it took until now. He's talked in the past about how we were in a much better place than early in the pandemic in terms of hospitals being able to respond. And we've seen hospitals now just really struggling worse than they ever have, including in the early days of the pandemic, to address this latest surge. So maybe that's what finally ticked it over the edge for him. I don't buy into the politics election argument personally, but we can't say for sure.
Let's talk specifics about the new COVID rules. The state will use that color-coded COVID-19 map that it updates weekly to determine what restrictions counties face. Can you walk us through some of those details if a county is an orange or red?
Yeah, I'm looking down at my computer screen because the executive order that lays down all of these details literally just came out as this show started taping. So we're finally getting some of the specific answers to the questions we've had since the governor announced this on Wednesday. The fundamentals that you, as a Hoosier, need to know is really about social gathering limits. So if you're in a county labeled orange, which at this point is almost every county in the state, you have to limit social gatherings to less than 50 or fewer people. When it comes to school extracurricular activities or sports, attendance at those is limited to 25% capacity, which as winter sports start up will have a big impact. If you look at a red county, the social gathering limit is now down to 25 people or less, and extracurriculars at school sporting events is down to really just limited to participants in the event, support personnel as they call it, and parents or guardians of those who are participating. But it's also important to note that on the social gathering limitations, all of these things can be overridden by the county health department. If you want to have an event that's larger than 50 people in an Orange County or larger than 25 people in a red county, you have to apply to your local health department for approval and lay out kind of how you plan to do it safely. And if approved, you can go ahead with that. So I don't know how much these gathering limits will ultimately really mean.
And we have just 15 seconds. So, I mean, what about enforcement for these restrictions?
There doesn't appear to be much. The governor has talked about using state agencies, but really to educate, for instance, business owners, as opposed to actually enforcing any of these rules.
All right, Brandon, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, extended unemployment benefits expire this week for about 3,000 Hoosiers. In Indiana, unemployed workers can currently get half a year of unemployment benefits, plus an additional 13 weeks of benefits under Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation. It's a temporary federal program. Now, if workers have exhausted both of those options, an extended benefit program adds yet another 13 weeks of unemployment eligibility. But state and federal laws force the Indiana Department of Workforce Development to turn off the extended benefits programs as the unemployment rate improves. Indiana's unemployment rate peaked at 17.5% in April. The most recent numbers available from September show the rate has dropped to about a third of that, to 6.2%. President Trump and many prominent Republicans are refusing to recognize Joe Biden as the president-elect, pleading their case to the courts. Brock Turner has more on why Indiana Attorney General Curtis Hill is getting involved.
The legal effort to keep Donald Trump in the White House now involves Indiana. Attorney General Curtis Hill has filed an amicus brief with the United States Supreme Court, arguing the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overstepped its authority to change certain counting deadlines. Hill joins attorneys general from 5 other states. All are Republicans.
When we see courts in other states cross the line and take over that process, and the potential impact that may have on the wishes of Indiana voters, we believe it's appropriate to take action.
States are responsible for running their own elections, but this case largely depends on the court's interpretation of Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution. That's if the Supreme Court even hears the case.
Overall, the Pennsylvania sort of post-dated ballot, type postmarked ballot issue is the strongest case that I've personally seen for challenging the election results. But it's also quite weak. Okay, like this is not what I would call a strong case, objectively. So that sort of tells you how weak these challenges have been from a legal perspective overall, in my estimation.
Hill says he doesn't accept Joe Biden as the president-elect, but couldn't provide examples of voter fraud, likely because there are no examples, only unproven allegations. Hill left open the possibility of Indiana entering briefs for other cases. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Brock Turner.
Some Indiana Republicans continue making unproven claims about voter fraud, casting doubt on last week's election results. Indiana Senator Mike Braun, a vocal Trump ally, spoke briefly to media earlier this week and says the process needs to play out.
I think it behooves all Americans to get to the bottom of it. When you look at how close the election was, basically a tie vote in the popular vote, if you take out the margin of difference in California.
Well, California's population is 5 times that of Indiana's. A significant Republican faction on Capitol Hill is saying for the first time that President-elect Biden should at least begin receiving intelligence briefings to ensure that he's prepared for national security challenges when he's inaugurated on January 20th. Now, party politics aside, state and federal officials and cybersecurity experts say there's no evidence that any voting system deleted, lost, or changed votes. Indiana University MALLOR School of Law professor Dawn Johnson is serving on one of President-elect Joe Biden's transition teams. Johnson will serve on the 29-person Department of Justice team. She also served on the transition teams for President Bill Clinton and President Barack Obama. Before joining IU in 1998, Johnson served in the Department of Justice in the Clinton administration. She was nominated to lead the Office of Legal Counsel by President Obama, but the Senate failed to act on her nomination, and it was withdrawn after 2 years. The review teams are responsible for understanding the operations of the agency they are reviewing to ensure a smooth transfer of power between administrations. Well, some employees with the Environmental Protection Agency in the Midwest are celebrating the end of the Trump administration. Members of the American Federation of Government Employees Local 704 say it's been difficult for them to do their job of protecting the environment. For one thing, dozens of staff members have left since Trump took office, including more than 40 scientists and engineers who still haven't been replaced.
And now that we've actually started to hire some new folks into the agency, it's been overwhelmingly white people that have come into the agency, so there's been no diversity.
Trump also signed an executive order banning some diversity training, which Chase says is essential for the agency's environmental justice work. Union members are hopeful that the EPA under Joe Biden will focus on pollution enforcement, climate change, and environmental justice. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. A Frank Lloyd Wright designed home in West Lafayette is getting $1 million makeover. Ahead, a look inside the house known as Samara and the history behind it. And the Indiana football team is ranked in the top 10 for the first time in half a century. Ahead, how Coach Tom Allen has lifted the program to new heights. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk. With today's political news coverage, a lot of meaning can get lost when we focus on partisan bickering and short sound bites. On Indiana Newsdesk, we give context to issues and policies. We strive for balanced, factual reporting you can trust. Understanding the news you hear and see are the first steps to recognizing the effects they have on you, your community, and your state. That's peace of mind. That's Indiana Newsdesk.
There's never been a more important time to make sure facts and the truth are driving conversation. Washington Week is an island of civil discourse in a chaotic media environment. On Friday nights, we gather the best reporters in the nation to unpack what's really happening and have a conversation that's not about point of view, but about informing the American people.
Washington Week.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Well, a grand jury declined this week to indict an Indianapolis police officer who fatally shot a 21-year-old black man in May during a foot chase. Demonstrators marched in Indianapolis to protest the decision.
You think the people of Indianapolis is going to continue to keep paying taxes here for you pigs?
The march, led by the local Black Lives Matters group, started down Lafayette Road and ended at IMPD's Northwest District, the headquarters for Officer DeJour Mercer. Mercer shot Drejon Reed after a police chase that streamed live on Facebook. One of the protesters' demands has been for Mercer to resign or be fired. Police say Reed had exchanged gunfire with Officer Mercer during the May 6 incident. Mercer is also black. Reed's shooting was not recorded by any police camera because the department only began implementing a body camera program in August. Well, new data shows the number of students attending public or charter schools is down nearly 15,000 from last fall. The numbers are based on a single day when the state counts the number of students attending a school. The count is used to calculate the funding a school district or charter school receives from the state. Around 270 traditional public school districts and individual charter schools reported a decline. The Indiana Department of Education says about half the decline is likely families delaying enrollment for kindergartners due to the pandemic. The National Park Service is chipping in $1 million to help fund the restoration of a Frank Lloyd Wright house in West Lafayette, Indiana. Wright designed the house in the 1950s for a young Purdue professor and his wife. He named it Samara. Today, it's one of the most complete Frank Lloyd Wright projects in the nation.
Samara is hidden in a residential neighborhood across the street from Purdue's Ross-Ade Stadium. John and Catherine Christian were newlyweds and wanted a home designed to entertain faculty and students. On a trip to New York, they discovered the neighborhood designed by Wright called Usonia and decided they wanted him to design their house.
So here's Wright busy doing all these great big designs. And we have this young couple, newly married, living where? In West Lafayette, Indiana. Who ever heard of that, right? And they had what Dr. Christian used to say is limited resources. So in other words, they had no money and they want to hire this world-famous architect. Well, what do you do?
John Christian picked up the phone one day and called Wright's office directly. Surprisingly, the famous architect answered. They hit it off right away, and Wright invited the Christians to his home for a visit. Over the next 5 years, the Christians met often with Wright and saved every penny they had until they finally had enough for the construction of the 2,200 square foot home.
Wright did everything here. He did the design of the home, he did the interior design as well, and he also did the landscape design. But the most amazing thing of all is that the Christians did what he told them to do, and not all clients did. And so that's what makes this one of the most complete Wright designs.
It took the Christians decades to purchase each piece of furniture, china, and decor that Wright planned for the house. A few pieces, such as napkins and a table runner, still remain to be added.
All right, we're going to go down the narrow hallway. Here's the master bathroom. You're welcome to pop in there if you want.
Eels says Wright loved to take ordinary things like lamps and fireplaces and design them in new ways to add a dramatic effect.
When we're back here, we talk about the cantilever, and what that means is that the support is in the back instead of the typical post and lintel construction like we're used to, right? Wright loves to use those. He likes the drama. So it looks like that's just floating there, right? He loves to do that.
When workers were constructing the fireplace, they went to Wright and told him the design was missing a support. Wright told them it wasn't missing anything and to build it exactly as he had specified. The result was, of course, dramatic. Samara means winged seed after the seeds of evergreens surrounding the home. The motif of the seed's propeller-like motion is seen everywhere in the house.
Wright designed from nature, okay? He said nature should be spelled with a capital N, like God is spelled with a capital G, because it's as close as you're going to get to God in this world.
In Samara, the red clay-colored cement floor in the dining room and kitchen is cut into large 4-foot square tiles, and the grid extends outside onto the wraparound patio. With high windows going all the way to the floor, the indoors and outdoors are visibly connected by the continuous square grid. Preservationists say the home is in good condition for its age, but after 64 years, it needs structural renovations. The $1 million grant will be used to repair decaying parts of the exterior, so visitors for generations to come can see Wright's hidden treasure, Samara. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Perry Metz.
Indiana football is ranked in the top 10 for the first time in 51 years. As Pat Bean reports, the rise in the polls shows how far the Hoosiers have come.
Indiana won just 5 games in each of Tom Allen's first 2 seasons as head coach. But last year, the Hoosiers won 8 games, broke into the top 25 of the national rankings for the first time in 25 years, and earned a trip to the Gator Bowl. Now, Indiana's 3-0 and ranked number 10 in the nation, its highest ranking since 1969.
It helps us prove and show that we're doing what we believe we could do. And we weren't just talking about it. Now it's becoming a reality.
The reality began with a season-opening win over then number 8 Penn State. Indiana followed a win at Rutgers with a convincing victory over then number 23 Michigan last Saturday. It was the Hoosiers' first win over the Wolverines in their last 25 meetings and marked the first time Indiana has beaten Big Ten powerhouses Penn State and Michigan in the same season.
Just intensifies that belief. And the belief is a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. And that's why ever since I stepped foot on this campus, even as the DC, it's always been about believing. And if you don't believe, then you just need to hit the road.
Having Michael Penix behind center will help make a believer out of anyone. After missing the last half of 2019 with a collarbone injury, the redshirt sophomore quarterback has thrown for 750 yards and 7 touchdowns in the 3 wins of this season.
We've accomplished some great things, but, I just got to stay on the team, make sure that they know that we still have a season still ahead of us. We still got to make sure that we stay focused, locked in, and, I can tell them that, and I also got to lead by example.
Allen knew Penix was special when he recruited him out of Tampa, Florida. Penix originally committed to play at Tennessee, but a change in the coaching staff there opened the door for the Hoosiers.
We just had to convince him to come to Indiana, but once we got him here, we just start realizing, man, this kid's got some things to him that most guys don't have.
Now it's on to Michigan State to battle for the old brass spittoon, a trophy Indiana has not won since 2016. A win would give Indiana its first 4-0 start to a Big Ten season since 1987, and that could take the Hoosiers to even greater heights.
Elevate was our one word. I wanted to elevate this program. I knew beating Michigan would elevate this program status in this country.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Pat Bean.
And a statue of Nobel Prize winning professor Elinor Ostrom now sits on Indiana University's campus. Ostrom passed away in 2012, leaving behind a legacy as one of the world's leading scholars. She made history in 2009 as the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in economics. IU leaders, alumni, and students gathered for the statue unveiling. Ostrom's former colleagues say her approach to academia wasn't based on hierarchy, but teamwork.
She really wished that her husband Vincent could share the Nobel Prize with her because they really were a team.
IU alumnus Michael McCauley worked 9 months on the bronze sculpture. He also created the Hoagie Carmichael landmark sculpture that sits near the IU Cinema. Ostrom statue is the first of a woman on the IU Bloomington campus. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. MALLOR GRODNER attorneys providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Alumni Association connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. Alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.